fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KC 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. Michael Hawley just got back from watching the Grammys.
How you doing, Al?
I'm doing good. So, did you hang out at the Grammys or anything like that? Or
No, I did not. But like we in Buffalo here, we experienced a little earthquake this morning.
Oh,
yeah, it was like a 3.8. So it's not like the 7.8 that Turkey felt, but nothing happens. But it did kind of like shake people up, and so I got to have a lesson today in my classes with earthquakes.
I'm going to say you've been eating too much and maybe you fell down and you shook the whole Buffalo area.
Yeah, my back is out too, so I haven't got the chiropractor appointed for Saturday. And I'm not kidding.
Boy, it's tough when you get in that age. Don't break your hip. That's,
You know.
It's the end when that happens.
That's right.
Oh, it's crazy. But no damage with your earthquake.
No. Just
Turkey. I guess Turkey got quite a smack. Wasn't that 7.7 or something?
7.8. Some of the after shocks were that like 7.5, so that's just intense.
Wow. It's going to be a lot of damage then.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because that's a big one. Wow. Well, speaking of damage, we've got a writer here who's written a book called Death of a Dancing Queen. So let's welcome the author, Kimberly Giarratano. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
Nice meeting you, Kim.
Thank you.
We'll see how delighted you are at the end of the show.
Uh-oh.
Oh, stop. This will be fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's going on? So you are writing a book called Death of a Dancing Queen. So this is some sort of a murder, crime fiction sort of novel. What got you into doing that?
Yes, it is. It's a P.I. mystery because I like private eye. I like hard-boiled fiction a lot. I was writing, this is, I think, my 6th book. Don't quote me on that. But I've been writing young adult. I was a young adult librarian for many years. And then I was writing young adult literature. And, this is my first foray into adult fiction because I wanted to write a private eye novel. And I couldn't envision it with a teen protagonist. I was like, no. This girl's young, but she's not that young. And, so I'm a huge fan of Veronica Mars, and the show ended and I was sort of bereft. I'm like, I could write fan fiction or I could just write my own PI novel. And so that's what I did. And it's set in North Jersey. I'm from New Jersey originally. I'm from Monmouth County, which is Central Jersey. It's a real region. but I felt like Bergen County, North Jersey, which is like, it's, sidles up to Manhattan. And it really felt like the right setting for hard-boiled noir, my take on it anyway. So if you love Veronica Mars, this is your book. This is like an East Coast Jewish Veronica Mars.
There you have it.
Yeah.
What do you consider the difference between young adult and old adult? Like what's going on with this? Help the old man here.
Sure. So young adult literature's it's aimed at an audience of adolescents. And, there is definitely delineations even with beyond that. There's like young adult, we might say, like lower YA, upper YA, it depends. Because adolescence goes through, for most of us, there's no real big difference between 40 and 50 years old, right? But between like 10 and 20, there is a huge difference. And literature really should reflect that. So when I was a young adult librarian, my job was to do programming for teens, to curate art collection for teens. And, teens always read up as well. So if you're 12 years old, you're more interested in reading a book that features a 14-year-old protagonist. If you're 14, you want to read a book that probably features a 16 or 17-year-old protagonist. And young adult literature really focuses on, adolescence and what it's like to be an adolescent. It's going to fall mostly on, teens are that centerpiece of it, and their feelings and what they're going through, and that's going to have to do with friendships and first romance and conflicts with parents and conflicts with other kids. When we're writing for adults, even a 24-year-old, as my protagonist Billy is 24 years old, when she is dealing with relationships, this is not her first time dealing with romance. It's not going to be her first time dealing with conflict. For Billy, the difference is she has to parent a parent because her mother has early onset Alzheimer's disease. She's also trying to figure out how she's going to work and pay the bills while caring for somebody as well. She has to navigate, obviously she's tracking down a criminal, so she has to navigate her work life with her family life. It's a very different cry from, say, when I've written about teenagers who are, let's take School Lies is my most recent young adult book before Death of a Dancing Queen, where I have two teenage protagonists, one who's having to navigate the disappearance of a sister while his parents are going through a divorce, having to deal with his feelings on his sexuality and, his interest in another character. And then that other character is having to deal with the death of a father and having to live under the roof with his mother, and still having to go to school and having to navigate all of that. So it's just another life stage.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be difficult to write, because you say hard-boiled noir, so it's usually pretty, a little bit more graphic, a little bit darker, heavier, more scenic, we'll say. So wouldn't it be hard to kind of write a young adult-centered hard-boiled noir?
I would say not. I mean, it could be done. The great thing about young adult literature right now is that, especially in crime fiction, it's really having a moment. There is some dark stuff coming out in YA. Tiffany Jackson comes to mind. Her book Allegedly is quite dark and incredibly evocative and really awesome. Karen McManus, she's also writing, she's, in my opinion, like the queen of young adult crime fiction. And her stuff also, they don't shy away. Mindy McGinnis is another one. I just reviewed one of her books, and she tackles murder and disappearance and teenagers. And
I guess times are changing.
Yeah.
It's just that you don't want nothing ever really bad to happen to someone that's a teenager in your book or story. Usually it doesn't fare as well, does it? Do people actually buy that sort of thing, or?
Teenagers do. Teenagers definitely. I mean, the audience, you remember when you're ready for teens, that's your audience, Right. Adults will absolutely read YA. I read a ton of YA, but that's not who you're writing for when you're writing for teenagers. But this idea that you can't have bad things happen to teenagers in books is definitely not what is coming out in literature today. I just reviewed another book and I'm blanking on it, but yeah, there's murder.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'll write some savage murder for kids,
You know what? Young adult literature is incredibly progressive, and it's way more progressive than, they will tackle themes and topics and be way more inclusive. And it takes a little bit of a while for adult literature to catch up, in my opinion, particularly with crime fiction, for sure.
That's exactly what I experienced because I teach high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing is they are much more progressive than, when I go out in my family and see a more conservative look to things, but also it's a really tumultuous time, the teenage world. And then, we even have to deal with suicides and the vaping is killing them right now. But there's a lot of tough things going on. I could see how they would be attracted to this kind of thing.
I will say nothing is off limits in young adult. I think adult authors in particular, especially if you haven't written a YA or read it, will think certain topics are off limits, and it's not. Sex is discussed in murder, and crime fiction, like I said, is having definitely this golden moment in young adult literature, but it's how you handle the topics that's really different. How are we handling it when we're writing for a teen audience is the difference between writing for a teen audience and then writing adult fiction.
Yeah, I guess it's like an Stephen King Carrie or something more extreme.
Well, I mean, Stephen King's horror.
Well,
that's pretty extreme.
Yes, it gets that way, but in a sense, like a lot of that sort of stuff was, we called it horror back in the 70s, but really today, is it? It's really more family dynamics and weird things going on and a little bit of fantasy and stuff. I don't know if it's...
No, that's a good point. Yeah. But I wouldn't call that's not a young adult novel. And Stephen King, I would think. I mean, that was not written for a teen audience. It has a teen protagonist. Yeah. Actually, teens read up too. Like when I grew up in the 90s, right? I was a teenager in the 90s. There was not really young adult literature for me. I think I read Christopher Pike, and then I read I know I read Michael Crichton and John Grisham. Like I read whatever my mom was reading because there really wasn't, like John Green, he's my age. He didn't exist. I mean, he did, but he wasn't writing obviously because his career didn't start then, but there really wasn't anything for me in the 90s.
Right.
And my son right now is in 7th grade. He's reading The Outsiders. And I'm like, that's probably one of the first young adult literature books, because he actually enjoys it. It's one of the few books he likes. But I'm like, yeah, that was probably one of the first YA novels to really come on the scene because it wasn't available.
Well, but with young adult now, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that sort of, so you're following someone that's, let's say, a teen or a couple of teens or some younger people, and you're kind of going through their experiences, and with that age, it's usually their firsts rather than adults, right? So, so in a sense, you're
right.
How do you yourself write from that point of view? And I say that not because, I mean, obviously you were that age at one time, but each generation has their own thing. It's different. So how do you let's say, tap into today's young generation when you write something like that?
That's a really good question. And the funny thing is, I've written 2 of my young adult novels are set in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
and I have written others that are set in present day. But a lot of the emotions you feel as a teenager kind of don't change. Sure, technology is different. But like my teen characters still have to deal with overbearing parents, which I remember very distinctly, and classmates that are unkind, which I also remember very distinctly, and trying to navigate very awkward and uncomfortable situations. But also it's so much about young adult literature is identity. Like, who are we? Who are we trying to become? How do we become those people in the face of, constant conflict? Everything feels so heightened when you're a teenager. And I have a teenager now. Like, everything is just, there's mood swings. Your hormones are going crazy. So, like, you always feel like you're insane half the time. And a lot of it is tapping into my memories of just emotions and feelings. Obviously, if I'm writing a book set in present day, like, I'm not including Tupac is not coming up. He did in one of my novels because it was the 90s, but now it's not. So I do have to be like really conscientious of the time period. And there are things that I do have to like check into, like social media sites that I'm not always on and things like that. But, in many of my novels, my young adult novels in particular, I'm dealing with crime and, there is some purpose to what's going on. So there is like, a bit of focus, but parents that feel overbearing, when I'm writing from a teen perspective, parents are the ones that are wrong, even if they might be right. Like, I might look at that parent and be like, well, you should listen to her. Mom knows what she's talking about. No, not to a teenager. Mom does not understand. And I have to make sure that is how it comes across, that feeling of you do not get it. That would be the difference. There are plenty of novels that have teen protagonists that are not YA. The Lovely Bones is a good example, where there is a teen protagonist, and it's not what I would classify as a young adult novel. I read a crime fiction novel the other day where half of the POV was from a teenager. It would not be a young adult novel. It doesn't have, the teen protagonist is going through some things, but it would not be classified.
You would also be writing from the first point of view, right? Like if you're writing a young adult, you're writing from their point of view. They're the voice you hear.
Sure. I mean, I write in third person POV, but yes, you're absolutely right. it's not always first person POV. I think I've only done first person POV for my first novel and then a novella that followed up. I like writing in third person, so I do it more often.
Is there an advantage to writing third person for you?
I think I sound better. Like, I think I write better in third person. I'm like, oh, that sounded so smart. I don't know. It's more of a comfort zone. Third person limited and first person POV. There's not really a huge difference. I just think I write better in third person.
So when you said you kind of felt like a purpose, so do you have like a subtext? Is there a meaning behind your books other than the entertainment and all the challenges and stuff? Is there an underlying current there that you hope readers pick up or?
Oh, always. Madonna said this once in an interview. She said, I didn't become a singer because I thought I had a great voice. I became a singer because I had something to say. And I always say that about my writing. I always have something to say. There is something I want to discuss. So, like, in Death of a Dancing Queen, I wanted to have fun. I kind of wanted to bring back Jewish mobsters, which I did. I wanted to set, like, a hard-boiled novel in North Jersey, which I think is the perfect setting for it. So I did. But I also wanted to talk about relationships, mothers and daughters particularly, talking about Alzheimer's disease, because somebody I love has dementia, and I wanted to kind of explore a relationship where a child is having to care for a parent for the most part, because even if you're 24 years old, you're somebody's child, and having to parent a parent, and what does that mean? And I wanted to, explore family dynamics. And I thought, what better way to do it than from the perspective of a 24-year-old who's trying to make their way in the world. And who also, at 24 years old, has to put some dreams on the back burner. When you're 24, the world should be your oyster, should it not? And it isn't. It's not for Billie. She can't just do what she wants. Like, when she was in college, she thought, she could graduate and maybe move to Europe, and travel. And she can't do any of those things because she has a parent at home that needs her, and she's not going to give up on her. And there's also a large genetic component that I wanted to talk about because Billie's mom has early onset Alzheimer's disease. That has a huge genetic component that could strike Billie as well. And so there is this fear that she has of ending up like her mom, of being a young person, who doesn't have her memories. And Billie's like, if you don't have your memories, what do you have? So, Billie is sort of, she's frightened by her future, but she's confronted by it every time she looks at her mother. And I really, really wanted to explore that as well. So I wanted to have fun, but I also wanted to tackle some serious stuff too. And then marrying the two, for everything that depressed me, I wrote something funny in the manuscript. It's not a downer. I want that to be so clear to people who are listening to this. I'm like, this is not a downer. You're going to read it and you're going to think, but you're also going to laugh and you're going to love these people. You will love them, I promise.
Well, Mike's already slit his wrist.
Well, I was.
Hang in there, buddy.
I was just I was more curious about that New Jersey deli. That sounds good.
Yeah, with the free
Doesn't
pickles.
Yeah,
I know. Somebody was like, is that wish fulfillment? Is there a deli that exists like that? And I was like, listen, any New Jersey deli, a good deli, Jewish deli, is going to give you some decent half sours with your order. They just are. I was at Sarge's Deli in Manhattan several years ago, and their coleslaw was so good. I was like, how do you make this? And they're like, we're not telling you.
I mean, when I was reading that, I said, oh, that's what the first thing coming to mind is about those delis right there. So. Yeah.
In my house, I'm constantly having conversations with my kids about decent pickles. And my son, they went food shopping yesterday, and he's like, they don't have half sours. You can't get, I'm like, they do, but it's in like refrigerated section. It's like in the deli. Like you can't, he's like, he wanted half sours because that's all I want to eat is half sour pickles.
So then Billie's ex-boyfriend, is this like are they like a reflame? Is it going to happen again, or how does that work? I love second chance romance. It's a big trope in romance novels, but I definitely have it here. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about first loves that you can't shake. I really like that too. Yeah, he's her first love, that she couldn't shake, and he does come back, and he also complicates everything because he's the son of a mobster she's investigating. So that would do it. And he's got his own rap sheet too, huh?
Yes. Of course, yes, because it wouldn't be fun if he didn't. You know what? Jews we used to be like really good mobsters, Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky. And one of these days I'll write a historical. I have a little fun tidbit though. It is rumored in my family that Bugsy Siegel hit on my great grandmother and my great grandpa, because they were all from the same neighborhood, the Lower East Side, right?
Oh, okay.
And my great grandpa was like, "Hey, Bugsy," and he's like, "Oh," because my great grandfather's name was Abraham, but they called him Pete. I don't know why, but I never figured that out. But they're like, "Oh, Petey, I didn't know she was your girl." Like, you know what I mean? Like that cool. But anyway, I really kind of wanted to harken back to it, and I was like, you know what? I could make them mobsters Italian, but then I was like, I feel like that's it is a stereotype. I didn't want to lean too much into it. I was like, why can't they be Jewish? Why can't I make my bad guys Jewish? That would be fun as well. So
my mother's maiden name is Siegel, so I have a thing for Bugsy and.
Yeah, he was awful. He was like we romanticized him because Warren Beatty played him, but he was the worst. Like he was really awful. But I'm still fascinated by Jewish history, particularly like the rise of organized crime. I just find that so fascinating. So
right.
I worked it into my modern day storytelling.
Oh, that's good.
Do you feel like you have to be careful when you get into Jewish and gangsters and stuff like that with today's kind of world?
I guess I don't, because I am Jewish. Like I'm in my lane, so to speak. I guess I don't in that particular. I mean, it's fiction, and it's tough because we're like it's a diaspora, right?
Right.
And my Jewish experience are so different from, let's say, my cousins who live in El Paso. Their Jewish experiences are very different from mine. And as a diaspora, our experience, like I have a very Ashkenazi, New York City, Lower East Side ancestry. We came from like the Pale of Settlement, and my Jewish experience is unique to a large group of people from New Jersey. I mean, growing up where I did, I grew up with a lot of Jewish kids just like me in many respects. So, do I expect somebody's going to read this and be like, that's not how I relate to Judaism? Sure, because we're a diaspora and our experiences are so different. I can only write from my own perspective. And could I? Yeah, I don't really worry about I guess, about offending anybody, because I could easily offend somebody who is also an Ashkenazi Jew from New Jersey and be like, I found this offensive. And I would never discount that, but I'm not going to worry about it as I write. I guess I would say that,
Yeah.
And I'd like to think, like, my friend's read it, who's Jewish. Like, my agent's Jewish. She's read it. Like, I'd like to think I've hit up enough of my friend, one of my other friends, she read an early copy. And the only thing I could ask her was, like, did the Jewish jokes land? Did you think they were funny? She's like, oh yeah, they did. Like, that was my only concern. Did my humor land?
Yeah. Well, and humor's tough, right? Humor, you got to be careful, especially when you're writing crime. I mean, you have to be careful on where it is to make it work.
Sure. I mean, I would never tell a joke. Like, I would be very careful about, I would never plan a joke at a different group's expense. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But these are like, I would never do that. But I feel like my group's fair game, I guess, is, like I should be able to poke fun at, and I should be able to poke fun at ourselves. Like, I mean, I think we're self-deprecating by, by nature, as a group too. So,
I had, one of my fiction novels is Victorian times during the Jack the Ripper time. So what I wanted to do was just like you did. I wanted to have a hook every page and have some kind of humor. So one of the Scotland Yard detectives was known for his humor. So I went into old, 19th century Victorian jokes, and they were all against the Irish. They were all just jokes that you would never say. So I really couldn't use many of them. That would have been really, really bad.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, it's tough because, we need to be respectful. We want to be respectful and we want to be, careful. We do. I mean, and we'll hear comedians nowadays be like, I won't tell that joke anymore. I can't even think of one off the top of my head.
Don Rickles, he was a killer.
Seth Seth Rogen made a comment like, there are some jokes that we just don't need to tell. We don't need to fight for them. They're not worth, they just,
Yeah.
Cultural shifts change. That's part of life. And we need to be mindful of that as well. But that doesn't mean that we can't have, that we can't explore our culture, especially our culture. You know what I mean? Like the one that I'm writing from, the POV that I'm writing from. I would not be sitting there, I can't explore another group. I can explore mine and I can have fun with mine. And sometimes a lot of the things that I talk about happen to me or said to me. And I do want to write about them because I want to point out the ridiculousness,
Right.
Of some of the things that I have been, that have been said to me. I want to, point out like, this is the world, like, see how crazy that is? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, exactly. I mean, I go through it all. I understand totally, and I get it, but I've made a career out of being, putting myself down and everything else.
Yeah.
Because
I love supper.
Because we take ourselves too seriously. It doesn't matter, how popular you are, but at the end of the day, it's overdone, so I just don't do that. I make fun of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he teases me about my goatee all the time, but.
Yeah, I love self-deprecating.
Well,
my friend,
yeah,
she's like, you're very self-deprecating at times. And I was like, cause it's easy. I don't mind taking shots at myself. Like it's, I'm fair game.
Yeah. Cause people, I get that sense of humor. I think it's very approachable. People generally like it. There's always room for complaints, but, lately that's been Michael.
I mean, the book isn't out yet. The book comes out on the 14th. So,
I'll get people on. Hey.
Who knows what emails I'll get?
Do you actually interact a lot? How should I say this? Do you do a lot with your, let's say, reviews and stuff? So when you put a book out and, Goodreads and Amazon and all that sort of stuff, are you paying attention to people that give you good or bad and all that sort of, do you follow through or do you just sort of ignore it?
I read my reviews. I just had a conversation with an author friend of mine and she was like, you read your reviews? And I was like, yes, because I want to know if people are reading my book. So Death of a Dancing Queen is my first traditionally published novel, I would say. All my other stuff, has been indie. My first book that came out from a small press, but I got my rights back. They were great. It's just, they didn't really know how to market YA, and that's fine. Totally fine. But anyway, I have not gotten a lot, so I read my reviews just to make sure, are people reading this? Do they like it? There may come a point where I'd just be like, you know what? I am better off not knowing. I don't want to be tagged in any negative reviews. Don't, I always say, if you like the book, tell me. And if you don't, just, don't tell me.
I always tell them, just if you like it, review and let me know.
Everyone.
And if you don't, put it in the bathroom.
Yeah. I would never pan, because as an author, and we know how hard it is to write and to produce and create art. We know how difficult it is. So I would never, ever pan a book online. If I don't like it, I don't say anything. But that's because I know how difficult it is. But, and I also know that reviews are not for writers. They're for readers, but I do read my reviews. So if you write a bad review, I'll read it. I'll find it. I stalk my book online constantly. I Google it all the time. If it was a person, it would have a restraining order against me because I just want to see, are people mentioning it? Is it resonating?
I had them down and killed them.
I would never.
Well,
and you're thinking he's kidding Kim.
There's a book.
Well,
there you go. That's
several.
A novel idea
I write
right
several books from people I've killed that have given me bad reviews.
I think you need to write a book about an author who kills.
Yeah, it's like you said what? No, I think nowadays I don't. Nowadays I kind of stand back and if I flip on Amazon, I'll see, like I said, it's 400 reviews and you're at a 4-star overall. That's good enough. I don't need to go into detail.
I hope to get to that point. I hope to have so many reviews that I can ignore them. That would be really nice.
Well, and it's not even about so many, because even on ones I've only got 40 or 50, I still don't, because to me it's just the overall, if you've got 50 reviews and overall you've got a 4.5 star, that means the majority of the people are liking it. I don't need to go find that 1 star that said that, I couldn't write, because it just depresses me, right?
No, you're right. I'm going to start doing that. You're right. I'm just going to check the overall star rating and then
same as
walk away.
Goodreads. You look at overall and it's like, well, okay, 980, you got 4 and a bit. Okay, good enough. Because I think,
you're right.
Because really, I mean, I'm thrilled to be even considered a 4 star. So if I've got with that many reviews, I must be doing okay. I'm doing okay, whatever I'm doing. So I don't need to have someone, say, well, he couldn't write like a 10th grader could write better than this, right? If someone says that, then it makes me feel bad. Then I worry about, you know what I mean? It sort of, it throws me off my game. So it's better that I don't, I think, at this point.
No, you're right. I should be doing that too. I have been.
Because you'll know how much you'll sell from, the publisher and all that stuff. Eventually you'll find out. They'll be like, well, we'll never do another book, or let's do another one. You kind of get back to knowing if it's worthwhile or not.
No, that's a very valid thing. I feel like in many ways, even though this is like my 6th book, I feel like I'm still a newbie, I guess.
That doesn't change.
Yeah.
I've got 29 books published now and 4 different publishers. And I'll tell you what, I'm still as insecure as you name it, as almost the first book.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, my husband, he's been in his job for 20 years. He's the most arrogant at it because he knows everything. And I'm like, I hope people like my writing.
Yeah, but and I used to realize the same thing and say the same thing. And then you realize, when you're in the art sort of world and you're creating something people pay for, it's different, because only do we say about singers, or about movie stars and even writers, they're a has-been.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Madonna's, what's that old has-been? It's only people in the performing industry and the writing and all the stuff like that we do, that they'll turn around. You could have 40 years experience in the business, instead of the respect you'd get, let's say, in your husband's job, because of his experience in doing it and confidence in doing it so long. It's the other way around. It's like, oh, what's that? Old person doing, it's some sort of negative comment. You don't get that in a regular job.
That is a really good point.
Right.
In art, and the other thing about art in general is just we're compelled to create. And when we think about, fine arts and dance and, music and particularly writing and stuff, it's like, we do this hoping it will see the light of day. Artists paint hoping they can sell a painting. We write hoping we can sell a book. And we do it probably just, we can't help ourselves. Like, that's what art is. It's just, you need to create regardless of the outcome.
Yeah. And we're lucky to have that. But, if you're doing this for 30 years, they're not going to treat you the same way as they treat your husband's been doing his job for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point. There
in
seems
general,
to be a bit of ageism for sure in arts. It's particularly, when you look at Hollywood too, right? Actors over a certain age don't get roles.
That's the worst thing. It doesn't matter who it is. Even like the Grammys, I made fun at the beginning, but you think about it, the old stars like Madonna makes an appearance, and you go through social media and half of them are like, oh, she looks good for a 27-year-old 100 vampire, or something, people love to do that. They would never do that in a regular job to someone that's, let's say you're at a Christmas party or some sort of thing, and someone that's been there 30 years and done their job really well and people know them. They would never make fun like that. It's just a different atmosphere when you come to art. So I think that keeps us insecure, to be honest.
I think it's a very valid point.
And if we do have an ego or an image, most of that I think is put on. Sometimes it's real, but I think people put on an image to kind of protect themselves from.
100%. Writing, I am the most proud of it. Of everything I've accomplished in my life, my books are my crowning achievement. And there's my kids and stuff, but it's like just a different thing. And I am, if you ask me about my work, I'd be like, I am very proud of every book I have ever put out. My indie stuff is great. My traditional published stuff is great. I am proud of my work. And at the same time, wholly insecure about it. Oh, you reading something. Did you like it? I'm like asking my friends, did my jokes land? Were you bored? Like, that's the worst. Don't tell me you weren't bored.
No, I only fell asleep twice.
Yeah, right. It's like, and
That's good, though, Kim.
That's good.
He's always sleeping.
But the bottom line is, if you really are happy with it, I think that's the important thing. If you're focused on the work, I think that was my point. If you focus on the work and not the noise that's around you with all this stuff, then you do good, because that's what you're doing. If it takes you off your game, if you start going down rabbit holes of, oh, I got a 1-star, I got a 2-star, this person didn't like it because of this, and it's like, well, it kind of throws you, I think. In my opinion, it takes you totally out of the framework of writing. I mean, I don't know, maybe what kind of writer are you? Are you able to just write under any sort of circumstance, or do you have to be in a certain, let's say, mood?
I am terribly, I should, when I focus, I'm great, but I find it really hard to focus. Also, when I write, I'm like, ugh, this is terrible. And I'm one of those people like, this is terrible. And then I go back and read them like, this is great. Why did I think this was terrible? I think in the moment.
And do you put yourself to, like, you're out cleaning floors, or you do other things intentionally to avoid facing the writing?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
See, I think that's quite normal.
Yeah. I'm reading Atomic Habits right now. I'm hoping that book will put me in a different mindset. Have you heard of Atomic Habits? It was really big.
No, but I don't read.
I mean, I normally don't read nonfiction. Lately I haven't been. People are like, oh, you should read this. I'm like, is that nonfiction? I'm not getting to it. But I just picked it up from the library, and I was like, just hoping that I can change some of my bad habits, which is that I can lose focus really easily. Any interruption just takes me off my game. What's actually helped a lot is just wearing headphones and listening to classic music while I write. That actually works.
Yeah, I think
I can't sing to classic music. You know what I mean? It's not Taylor Swift. I can't hum along. So it just fades in the background, and then I don't have to, and keeping my phone away from me, of course, and all that stuff.
So how about you seem very extroverted, and that would be leading to a lot of social media that you would be involved with and all that. Do you do that? Does that help?
Yeah. Does it help? I mean, Twitter makes me feel depressed. I'm like, oh God, the world is crashing and burning and everything is awful. And,
it's
Instagram,
like being in a bad bar fight at Twitter.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, how is the world not crumbling around me? But I'm a news junkie. I just want to know what's going on all the time. And, Instagram always makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. I'm like, oh damn it. I should be, I'm like, I need a graphic. I need to tweet, I need to do something. I love TikTok. TikTok is, I get that the people, data and security and all that stuff, but I do not care, because TikTok is the most entertaining social media platform that exists.
Yeah, don't worry. They shot down the balloon, so it's okay.
That's right.
Well, of course. And then the balloon, I'm saying to my husband, I'm like, why? I mean, I would imagine they spy on us all the time. Why do they make it so obvious? Like, I'm like, why was it so conspicuous?
Why do you need a balloon with satellites? I don't know.
I'm like, oh, but social media just gets away from me in terms of like, it's very disruptive. It is a time waster, and it's one that I sort of welcome. And I'm like, oh no, get off this. So, I am an adult woman who has to school herself constantly on, you are going to work for an hour, put your headphones on and shut up about it. Like, I have to really be harsh with myself, because when I write, I feel amazing. Even if I write garbage, or I think it's garbage at the time, when I am productive, I feel like my best self. I'm like, I'm invincible. I did, an hour's worth of work today, and I'm like, I could take on the world. It's incredible. And then when I don't write, I feel terrible. But at the same time, it's like, you don't want to do it. It's work. I don't know. Producing art is just, we're like nuts to do.
Well, I would stick with that. I wouldn't change that much, because it's that combination that makes it work.
I can't imagine not writing. I just can't. And, I hope to be lucky enough that I get to keep doing this. Like, a publisher keeps saying, we'd like another book. Like, I hope to be in that. I mean, I've done indie stuff, so I can always go back. If there's no takers in life, I'm just going to do it myself because I can't not write, and I do have stories to tell, and I have things I want to say, you know? So it's, you know, if I don't do it, I think it would just eat me. So it's going to have to happen.
You're just like Michael. He's got things he's got to say.
Yeah.
And,
Always.
and if he can't do it, then, you know, he's a mess.
That's right.
It's like, it's pressure valve in you know, writing is just releasing that pressure valve. I'm like, I have this great idea, you know, and I got to write it.
So do you have a notebook with you all the time? So when you have a life experience, I could add that in my book.
No, I do. So I have notebooks, but I don't carry them with me. Like, I have, you know, when notebooks go on sale for like $1 each, like at Staples in the beginning of the school year, I buy you know, 20 notebooks. I just have blank notebooks everywhere. And every novel gets a notebook. And I scribble ideas, and they just, you know, one idea leads to another. And I do a lot of like just scribbling down of notes for a while, but it'll live in my head. I'll be driving in the car. I'll like plot out something, you know, I'll go home, I'll write it, but I don't carry it with me because I carry a very small purse. Like, I'm not carrying a notebook with me. No, I wish I did. I do imagine them fully fleshed out people, though, like, that I could like run into. You know, I visualize things kind of like a TV show. You know, I imagine scenes at a time. They're not always cohesive. So sometimes like that takes a while to plot because I'll just imagine like, wouldn't this be a cool scene? And this would be a cool scene, as if I was scripting a television show. And then weaving them together is really where it gets tricky. Cause I don't like, you know, I will draft the first act loosely without a plot, like without an outline, but then I can't continue. So I write in 4-act structures, and I can't do acts 2 and 3 without a plot outline ready to go. Cause then I don't know what I'm working on. And then when I don't know what the scene looks like, I can't draft.
Did you kill off people you know?
I have definitely, you know, it's funny. I don't want to get like, I'm working on a book, and I gave a character a name, and then a family member started dating a person with that name, and I didn't change that. I was like, too bad. That's who it is. Deal with the consequences. So I have done that, though. I'm like, oh, so this person bothers me. Yeah, that's who the character is named after.
Yeah. Well,
First one gets off.
Yeah, and I've talked to writers that, like, you know, big writers that say that they'll be in a supermarket and someone will butt in or do something really rude, and they take that character and kill them off in the book.
Oh yeah, right? Like that's just
yeah.
that is our just yeah for sure. I could do that.
Well, I think an advantage, I guess, in fiction too, right? When you're writing a fiction crime, in a way, you get to choose the ending. You get to resolve and kind of give some sort of justice, right? Whereas in true crime and stuff, you can't always, it is what it is.
I always say true crime, like I love true crime podcasts, but true crime is so boring when you think about it, right? A wife goes missing. In reality, who's responsible? The husband. It's almost always, like the spouse is almost always the one and it's always the case. Like, you can't do that in a book. It'd be so boring. Be like, oh, that guy. You know, so, you know, true crime, we're so fascinated by the crimes itself because, you know, when it comes to true crime, like how somebody can take a life like that is what I think, you know, draws us to it. But when writing fiction, I mean, for me, making the puzzle, the whodunit part is where I have so much fun. It's like, you know, playing with my audience too. Like, I can't make it the most obvious person. That wouldn't be fun. You know, red herrings are exciting, you know, like, throwing those all in.
I don't like fish.
I don't like herring.
Yeah.
So Kim, I both do true crime, nonfiction. I also do fiction. Mm-hmm. And I know what you mean when I love the fiction because I get sucked into that world that I've just created. One of the thing I love about true crime is if I discover something that nobody else knows yet, and I'm going to introduce the world to it. So the discovery gives me some euphoric feeling. So it's kind of like a different animal.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love true crime, it just, like I spend hours driving and I'm like, listening to murder podcasts about, real murders, like things that are not funny and I cannot joke about. But, cause it's how it unravels and how they capture people and things like that. But yeah, I enjoy the puzzle aspect, like when I plot something and I'm like, oh my God, I had this genius idea. And then like where I could stitch it all together. I mean, that's my euphoria, but for sure. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about it. Plus, like I said, there'll be justice I think a lot of people in the real world, they don't feel there's a lot of justice. Like it doesn't always end the way it's supposed to. And the right people aren't always, or they're out in a year or 2 years or so. There seems to be this real failing in the justice system, but
sure.
with the crime fiction, your person that did it is going to get it.
Yes.
Right. So there's justice. There's a resolve.
Yeah. There's satisfaction for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big difference too, right? Whereas, you can read a lot of crime books, true crime books, and there's no real resolve. Or sometimes it's real irritating or frustrating at the end when you find out that the killer got away or the killer only had to do 4 years in jail or something. And, you hear all these things and you feel, it doesn't feel the same. In fiction, you could have them electrocuted or get shot or put away,
There's definitely justice for sure. And that's important to me as a writer because I want not a tidy ending, although I'm probably guilty of making tidy endings, but I like to see justice done, especially in hard-boiled fiction. I feel like justice should be done. So I do personally enjoy that as a writer and a reader. One of the things is, like, I am drawn to true crime, but I do get frustrated. I'm like, they didn't capture this person? Like, this is a serial killer and they didn't get him? Like, you're like, oh, well, yeah. You get so annoyed. You're like, eh.
Well, I think too, we're sort of, led into a false sense of hope or belief from shows like CSI and all this, that everything gets solved. And it's really not that way. Or the, the profilers and stuff who really don't catch anybody.
Sure.
You're right.
Yeah,
it's just, it's always accidental when people do get killed or they've done something, they left parked in the wrong place and got a ticket and they got tied to a crime and it all comes together. But it's not like some FBI profiler somewhere that's caught them. That all sounds great on these shows, but it's not real life. So yeah, it's crazy.
But I think that's why I watch shows like that and I read books like that. I know there is that fantastical element that I am there for, You're
not going to be left frustrated going, oh, goddamn person should have gone.
Right. I'm reading it to get maybe from the fiction what I can't get from real life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's a true thing that I find. But so do you have all your social media set up? Where do people find you? Where do people find Kim?
Well, my website is kimberlygiarratano.com, so my author name. And you can find me at Twitter at KGGiarratano, at Instagram at Kim Garnick Giarratano. That's my whole name. So if somebody's listening to this from high school, they'll be like, wait, I know that girl. Facebook, KG Giarratano author. I mean, if you Google my name, author, I'm really the first listing that should pop up. And if you Google Death of a Dancing Queen, you will find me that way too, because it's a pretty unique title. So if you don't put in quotes, though, you will get ABBA references. Yeah. Just FYI.
Oh, of course. Well, you know what? We'll have all that up on our website so people will be able to find you one click. Because it's, even though it's a real common name,
Yeah.
And so, and of course your book will be up as well and stuff like that. So it's all done. Now, how was COVID and writing over COVID?
I was very bad about writing over COVID because I had my kids home for quite a bit. So actually what happened was this book was drafted in 2019 for the most part. I finished it in April of 2020. It was like, oh no. I'm like, can I query? Because it was April of 2020. So I'm like, can I query it? And I was like asking other authors and they're like, it's all right. Go ahead. People are still working. So I got my agent, I want to say May, and I love her to death. So that was like a good thing. But it did take a while to sell this. And believe it or not, I got responses from publishers that were female-led private eye fiction is like not a hot market.
Oh,
Huh. I thought female-led would be the hot market.
yeah.
Not for private eye.
Oh, okay.
So male-led private eye, I think because it appeals to men, is fine. But female, like I would hear from publishers that, like, you know, cozies, female-led, great. Amateur sleuths, great. Psychological suspense, great. But this weird in-between of hard-boiled, female-led hard-boiled, not great. And I'm like, how is that possible? Sue Grafton, Sarah Paretsky, Janet Ivanovich, like these are big, giant authors. Like, how is this a thing? And they'd be like, well, you know, we need more recent comp titles and we don't, you know, there isn't any. And I was like so depressed. But Datura Books, by the way, and I want to plug this because they are amazing. Datura Books is the new crime fiction imprint from Angry Robot. Angry Robot puts out award-winning science fiction and fantasy novels. And this is their new crime fiction imprint, and I'm the first title to come out of it. Yeah. Eleanor Teasdale, who is the publisher at Angry Robot and Datura, read my book in a week and was like, this is who we want to lead our crime fiction imprint. And I love this woman. She lives in England. They're across the pond. They're amazing. And I love her. And I have never been more grateful for the experience because I really love Billie, my character, and she is resonating with readers, and readers are saying we want to see more of it. And I'd like to think that we can have a new generation of, you know, Kinsey Milhones, you know, and Stephanie Plums. And so I'm hoping that's what we're going to see now today too.
Nice.
Well, I'm sure you will. So anyway, we appreciate you being on the show. Of course,
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Of course, the book we're talking about is Death of a Dancing Queen. And no, that's not Michael. And the author's been our guest, Kimberly G. Giarratano. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, everyone. And it's out on Valentine's Day, so it would make a great Valentine's Day gift for a reader.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or shows, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.